All right, folks, buckle up. We're going deep today. Into the world of retaining walls. You know those things that hold back dirt, create those cool terraced gardens.
Mhm.
They always make me wonder, how do they even work?
Yeah, you see them everywhere, right? But you never really stop to think about like all the forces going on behind the scenes. It's a lot more complex than it looks.
Exactly why we're diving into this article today. It's from DIY Retaining Wall, called Contact an Engineer Before Building a Retaining Wall.
Oh, good one. So many things people don't realize. Like, take the height of a retaining wall, for instance. It's not as simple as you might think.
Wait, what? I always thought it was just like, is it taller than me? Okay, better check the rules.
Nope, not even close. It's all about the measurement from the bottom of the footing, that buried part that anchors the wall, all the way to the tippy top.
Huh. So, like, if I've got a wall that's, say, 3 feet tall above ground.
Uh-huh. But then you got to add the footing, right? Usually like 6 inches at least. Boom, you're at 3.5 feet total height.
Okay, so already taller than I thought. And what that makes a difference for, like, permits and stuff.
Big time. A lot of places. 4 feet is the magic number. Anything taller, you got to get the city involved.
Gotcha. So first takeaway for everyone listening, check those local building codes. And don't forget the block manufacturer's specs, too.
Exactly. Now, while we're busting myths about these seemingly simple structures, ever heard of surcharge?
Surcharge. Is that like when I go over my credit card limit?
Haha, not quite. In this case, it's any extra weight or force that's pushing against your wall. From the side, I mean. Like, imagine parking a car too close. Or having a pool right behind it.
Okay, starting to get it. But wait, the article also mentions trees as a surcharge, really?
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't believe how strong tree roots can get, and as they grow, they push outwards, right into your wall. It's a slow battle, but the tree usually wins if you haven't planned for it.
Wow, okay. So how far away should you keep things?
No.
Any, like, rule of thumb?
There is. The 2x rule, we call it. Distance from your wall to anything causing surcharge. Got to be at least twice the wall's height.
So 4-foot wall, got to keep things 8 feet back. Makes sense. Now, I've always loved those tiered retaining walls. You know, the ones that create those cool stepped levels. But something tells me there's more to it than meets the eye.
You got that right. Tiered walls, they can be tricky when it comes to the rules, because if those tiers are close together, sometimes they treat it as one giant wall.
Seriously. So I could have 2 small walls, and they're basically considered one big one. That's crazy.
Yep. Imagine 2 3-foot walls spaced 4 feet apart. On paper, that's a 6-foot wall, and that usually means you need an engineer's stamp of approval.
Okay, another lesson learned. Tiered walls. Do your homework, people. Talk to the pros. Make sure you're on the right side of the law.
Couldn't agree more. Now, speaking of things that can mess up a retaining wall, let's talk about water, the ultimate nemesis.
Uh-oh, that sounds ominous. I mean, water is good for plants, right? So why is it such a big deal for these walls?
Well, think about it. Water, it's heavy. And when it gets trapped behind a wall, it builds up this pressure, hydrostatic pressure, they call it, like an invisible hand, pushing, 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 and eventually, something's got to give.
So it's not just keeping the wall itself dry. It's managing all the water behind it, too.
You got it. You got to think about redirecting downspouts, making sure the ground slopes away from the wall, sometimes even installing drainage systems within the wall itself.
The article also mentions being extra careful if you're near a pond or a creek, or even if your area just has seasonal water flow. I guess that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just natural water sources either. Things like leaky irrigation lines or even just a downspout dumping water right next to your wall, that can cause all sorts of headaches down the road.
Wow, okay. Note to self. Check those downspouts. Now, what about other things people might not think about when planning a retaining wall? Any surprises there?
Location, location, location. Specifically when it comes to earthquakes.
Earthquakes, like if you live in California or something.
Well, yeah, that's the obvious one. But there's actually a map from the USGS shows seismic risk zones all over the country. You might be surprised to find that you live in an area that gets, like, a little shaky sometimes. And that can definitely impact a retaining wall.
Right, because it's a structure, and earthquakes put stress on structures. So what if I live in one of those areas, I should probably talk to an engineer before building anything.
Definitely a good idea. They can help you design a wall that's strong enough to handle those forces. Now, speaking of safety, gotta think about walkways too, especially those close to the wall.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just the wall itself, it's the area around it, too. What kind of rules are we talking about here?
Well, for example, if your wall is over 2.5 feet tall and there's a walkway within 3 feet of it, you'll probably need a handrail. building code stuff.
Makes sense, yeah. To prevent falls, especially for, like, kids or older folks, anyone who might have trouble keeping their balance.
Exactly. It's all about creating a safe space that everyone can enjoy.
This is blowing my mind. I never realized how much goes into building a retaining wall.
It's definitely more than just stacking some blocks and calling it a day. But there's still so much more to uncover. Before we wrap up this part, though, one last thought.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
We've talked a lot about the technical stuff, the rules, all that. But let's not forget, building a retaining wall, it can be amazing for your landscape. It can add visual interest, create usable space, even boost your property value.
That's a great point. We don't want to scare people away from these projects. It's about empowering them with knowledge so they can make smart choices.
Exactly.
This has been so informative. I feel like I've learned so much about retaining walls.
It really is fascinating, isn't it? How much thought and work goes into these things.
I know. I used to just see a retaining wall and be like, ah, that's nice. But now I'm like, whoa, there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes there.
Haha, exactly. Hopefully, this deep dive has given everyone a new appreciation for these structures. They're more than just walls. They're a blend of art, engineering, and a whole lot of hard work.
Well said. So for anyone out there thinking about building a retaining wall, do your research, talk to the experts, and most importantly, have fun. It's a big project, but it can be so rewarding.
Couldn't agree more. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Until next time, happy building.